Hi, my name is Jayden Glinka. I'm a zoology student at the University of Cumbria. My pronouns are they, them, and I identify as lesbian or queer with a preference to queer. I first figured out my sexuality or started to acknowledge my sexuality when I was 9 years old. I told my mom on the way to school one day that I thought I was gay, as I had a crush on my teacher at the time. My mom kind of just told me that she felt that I was confused and I was mixing up attraction with admiration. So for a very long time, I kind of just adopted that kind of ideal that if I did find attraction to anyone who was a female, that I was just admiring them, that I was just getting confused. It wasn't until I was around 12 years old when I developed a crush on a very close friend of mine that I started to really question my own sexuality and once again went back to the idea of, am I gay? I remember being very scared all the time. My family is religious and I was brought up being religious and believing in God, and part of that ended up meaning that I felt very afraid of the consequences of being gay. I was worried about going to hell. I remember spending nights praying, just asking for whatever the feelings I was feeling to go away. It never did. And that went on for years, I'd say from when I first figured it out at 12 all the way until I was probably about 15. The older I got, the more I broke away from this ideal of religion and God and church, and I started to really acknowledge the feelings that I had and stopped pushing them away so much. However, I still didn't want to be gay. I was worried that I wouldn't be accepted in my family. There are certain things that my parents had done or said that made me believe that it wasn't acceptable for me to be gay. Instead, I started trying to convince myself that I was bisexual, because in my brain at that point it was, at least then I can be happy with a man and I wouldn't have to ever acknowledge that part of myself. I would never have to tell anyone about that side of myself. I could just be bisexual and no one would question it. As long as I was with a man, I could pretend I was straight. And that was part of my thought process for a very long time. I told a few close friends and they were all very accepting, but even then I still told them that I was bisexual. I wouldn't acknowledge that there was any kind of other alternative for me. One of the biggest impacts for me in LGBTQ history would be the Pulse nightclub shooting. Growing up in Canada, when anything happens in the States, you get wind of it right away. And I remember sleeping over at a friend's and waking up that morning to hear about what happened with the Pulse nightclub shooting. And I remember just feeling immense amounts of grief and fear. I was very afraid. I was about 16, 17 years old when that happened and was only out to one of my closest friends. And I just remember being confused and upset and afraid. And I couldn't comprehend how anyone nowadays would do something like that. It really shook me, and I have to say that's probably the first time that it really was real about how dangerous it is to be an LGBTQ plus person. I'd already always acknowledged that it wouldn't be easy, and that, within my personal life things could be changed, but I don't think it really hit me until then just how much risk there is involved when you are an LGBTQ plus person. You can't always know what anyone is going to do or say, and unfortunately things like the nightclub shooting can happen, and does happen. And I don't think people really realize how those kinds of things are still a factor in our society.